the reality which is the self, ever is and alone is. That which is unreal never exists. Those who see the truth comprehend this. How is it that they see the truth? The reality alone can know the reality. Brahman alone knows Brahman. No other can do so, nor does any other exist in order to attempt to do so. How do the seers of truth see the truth? By abidance in that as that itself. It is not possible for the unreal to know the real, or the not-self to know the self. Knowledge belongs to the self alone, and in this lies liberation from all of the imagined bondage. Sri Bhagavan tells us to inquire, who am I, in order to realize the self. He also says how to realize or make more real that which is already real. Therefore, in the inquiry to know oneself, it is more a matter of unrealizing the unreal. That is, ceasing to misidentify, confusing the self with what is not the self. The Maharshi has said, who is to realize what when all that exists is the one self? And he also advises to inquire, who am I? There is no contradiction. If the one who does not know the truth examines his own nature, his knowledge, the knower and the known, all turn out to be the same thing. Samsara, or the realm of illusion, prevails only due to not knowing the self. If the self is known, there is no samsara whatsoever. Therefore, the Maharshi defined Maya as that which is not. Not as something temporarily occurring, nor as some independent power, but simply that which is not. For the realization of supreme truth, put the question to yourself. Inquire deeply within yourself as to who am I? The one who realizes truth is already existent. And that one, that the being of that one, is the substance of the realization. For in this, being is knowing. It is not a conceptual or perceptual knowledge, not through thought or the senses. How will you know yourself? Not through seeing and hearing, not through thinking. How is it that you know that you exist? It is with that very same knowledge. If there is one who seems to stand apart, to say, my experience, I have not realized, I will realize. Who is that one? Sri Ramana says to say, I have realized the self, I have not realized the self, both statements are absurd. Because all there exists is this one self, pure being, consciousness, bliss, without form, without division, without type or phase or condition or limitation of any kind. It is unborn, so it is innately imperishable. Only that which is without beginning and end is real. That which appears with beginning or end actually never began at all. The realization of this is its end. That unborn, imperishable existence is what you are. To conceive otherwise is merely imagination, and that imagination is at the root of all that is of the nature of bondage or suffering. The suffering depends on bondage. The bondage or limitation consists of misidentification or ignorance. The ignorance all has its root in the conception of existing as an individual entity, an ego. Search out that sense of I in yourself, the one that seems to be individualized. If you inquire into that one, no bondage is found, and there is the liberation. If you inquire into that one, no ego is found, only one self exists. The Upanishads instruct Tattvamasi, that you are. It is a statement of the truth. To realize its significance, one need not pretend to stand apart from it. That is, as if an onlooker or a contemplator of it. Because the statement is that you are. Not that you are another, but that you are. What you are does not change at any time. What changes is not true. The characteristic of what is true or what is real is that it is immutable. The changeless abides in and as the changeless. That is, it realizes itself. Through inquiry to know who you are, abandon false definition, that is, relinquish misidentification, including the notion of I. Then everything the Maharshi has imparted is abundantly clear. Inquire within yourself to realize the essence of this. The eyeless being that remains, the eyeless consciousness, which is infinite, that remains, is the silence. inquire. And if at any point you feel like you wish to ask a question, please feel free to do so. Or if you want to relate your own experience, please feel free to do so.
Today you were speaking again of the nondual reality. Reading and meditating on Shankara's Viveka Chudamani this week and listening to you talk today, one thing I read that was particularly significant to me this week was that any idea of the world or any other such associated idea like the self, the individual rather, are a imagined limitation of reality. And to me, this again helps with the discrimination. Anything that is objective is an idea of limitation and can't be real.
To whom does the imagination belong? If the world be merely imagined, who imagines?
If I am saying Tattvamasi that I am, then how that relationship exists between me and God. If I'm God, or if I am that Sat, why do I feel difference all the time, even though I know mentally, in my mind, emotionally, in my emotions? I try to see everything the same, but still, no. I still feel because there is somebody, the same aspect, the other person is the same. Because if I am Sat, then other person is Sat. Why their action is perceived by me as pain, or my actions being perceived by them as pain? Is it all just because imagination?
What is the definition of you when we speak of others, relating to others, reacting to others?
Mm-hmm.
What is the definition of you? As some sort of person?
Yeah.
And how do you mark off you and the other person? By the bodies and the minds apparently inhabiting them?
Right.
Even though the body's in the mind, it seems as if the mind is in the body. Once there's that definition, then there are others. Once there are others, even though one yearns for oneness, problems will arise. Go back the way you came. Examine your own definition. If you examine your own definition, you and others as individuals vanishes. The division between you and the universe vanishes. The ideas of you, a God, and the world, Jagat Jiva Para, all that vanishes. Based on the definition of yourself, the divisions appear. And what you're divided from will always be the mirror image of the definition of yourself. So according to how you as the jiva are defined, so God will be defined. Likewise the world and the people in it. If you say, I know this, but I feel otherwise, examine what constitutes what you're calling feeling. Invariably it will turn out to be certain ideas, thoughts, upon which you place too much emphasis because you lend them your reality and your identity. When identity and reality, as well as happiness, return to the right place, you see what is.
After practice become a balance, if you practice not having the I and becoming all of one, does it balance?
Balance between...
Balance about the unbalance?
Balance between what and what?
It's true, it's already, even as it were, because there's no more movement. But I mean, as to say, like you said, and it will all come to be the bliss and the happiness that we all come into place. So that is, I would, as a word, balance. Does help.
If, as was just mentioned, the sense of what happiness is, the knowledge of happiness, is strong or returns to its right place, you will find yourself detached from all else, and all will be at peace or in balance, regardless of the state of affairs of external events. If further, upon knowing where happiness is, you determined that since it is within, you must know yourself, and you come to know yourself, that happiness, that peace, seen initially with detachment, will be found to be immortal. And if you wish to call that state balance, all right.
how do we know that the state of knowing that we have realized or achieved or been in touch with or blended with, how do we know that's not just another stage of perception? After all, there are so many paths that people feel that they're on, and each one thinks that they're on the right path, and they are going to be in a state of ultimate reality. So the reality that we believe we have achieved, if you want to call it an achievement, how do we know that that's not merely another sense of perception, even though it may be a more refined state of perception than the one we had before?
You say that each one feels he knows what is right or what's true or the right path. The forms of such differ. The feeling of rightness is the same. What is the source of that rightness? You have the sense of, with each experience, this is real, regardless of how illusory it is. This is real. Next experience, that is real, that is real, that is real. The sense of reality remains unalterable. The forms keep changing. From where does this sense of reality derive? If we say from the senses, that is absurd. If we say from our minds, what happens in deep dreamless sleep? Or in any state where the mind is not thinking, still there's the sense of what is real. There's no objective part to it, but still there's the sense of reality. From where does that come? If you trace that inward, reality comprehends itself. And since it's free of causality, it is not a perception or conception. The reality in itself is never a known or unknown object. In the non-objective, which is the formless, duality, it could be this, it could be that, becomes impossible. Is this clear for you?
Not necessarily. It's just wanting to be faithful to myself, I suppose, or to the reality itself, and by acknowledging that as there have been stages of truth which I felt were the ultimate in the past, I don't want to be trapped in the sense of having reached, or in a definitive way, being on the path of realization.
The fear is not grounded. If you do not find the reality, your happiness will not be complete. Being and bliss are identical. Unless being as it is realized, bliss will not be complete. Your own innate search for happiness will not allow you to stagnate. So if you arrive at some conception, perhaps lofty, even ethereal, but it is not the final goal, something will urge you on. Onward is inward. Where there exists only one without a second, such doubts no longer arise. As long as such doubts are possible, it'd be wise to inquire.
It's along the similar lines as question. When, I'm in satsang or I meditate, I have that experience of, expansion and happiness. But it doesn't stay all the time. So is it that it is continuous inquiry that is required? Because it's not there 24 hours of the day.
Where does it go? Does the expanse come and go, or does something else rise and set?
The mind chatters.
When we cease to regard what is true, which is the self, as an objective experience, and cease to regard ourselves as an ego entity, what you want is accomplished. Why treat the direct experience of the self as if it were an object, and a time-bound one? Your being does not come and go. The mind's chatter comes and goes. Which one is you? Continuous inquiry should be the case. The end itself appears as the means. For continuous knowledge, there should be continuous inquiry. What is now called inquiry is later revealed as self-existent knowledge. For what actually occurs when one inquires? Is it thinking or something else?
Along the same lines, like when you experience that peacefulness, as if something just pushes itself on to bring it, seems that mind or whatever is more powerful than that bliss or that happiness. For that minute, it feels like just makes you restless, just makes you to throw out from.
From where does the mind get such power?
I believe that Atman or whatever that bliss is, gives the power, but that's where I sometimes wonder, why does it give the power that strong?
So even delusion is a testimony to the vast power of the self. What thoughts have power to delude you? Do all thoughts delude you? Or do only some upset you?
Except the thought of something higher is there because you experienced it. So it just gives you the strength to go on sometimes.
So thoughts that are of a higher nature don't disturb you, but other thoughts do disturb you. What makes the thoughts that are disturbing, disturbing?
Because it confuses you, makes you totally restless, not concentrate, not focus, everything.
Do the thoughts confuse you as if they were animate in themselves, or are they inert, empty illusions to which you lend reality?
It seems like they have the power, but at times.
If we attribute to them their own power, it is we who attribute that power. The thoughts don't declare their own existence. You have to say, they exist. These are I. They don't do anything. All the thoughts depend on you for their apparent validity. In highest truth, they depend on you even in order to appear. And since consciousness is never modified, thought really is non-existent. But if you consider your thoughts to be existent, then search out from where are they deriving their power. You will find that those thoughts with which you identify cause the problem. If you did not misidentify with them, did not claim them as I or mine, they would be as disturbing to you as somebody else's thoughts, which generally don't bother you.
I was thinking about that.
The confusion is over I and mine. If we assume that something else determines our freedom, when will liberation come? There'll always be some kind of thing, changeful, disturbing, etc., in the phenomena, in the senses, with the thoughts, etc. If we find out for whom these are, who is declaring their importance, their reality, their disturbing ability, you'll find everything lies in yourself. When you see that, liberation's at hand.
Do we achieve reality at the time of death?
We ourselves are the reality all the time, and life and death do not alter that. Consequently, the Gita says, neither for the living nor for the dead do the wise grieve. For that which has life or birth, death is certain. For that which has death, birth is certain. If we know ourselves as we are, life and death, birth and death, do not pertain to us. We are the unborn, the unperishing. And that existence is itself of the very nature of liberation or moksha. Go ahead, Eric.
In our discussion on Friday night, it just became more apparent that what self-inquiry was. And I keep forgetting that. And even during this discourse today, it just flashed like, oh, you really have to know yourself. And this kind of not thinking. It was more like really kind of understanding that had to be the case. Now, I guess what now I guess it's strange because it's almost my identity which determines how I meditate sometimes. So it's kind of like catch-22.
Why do you say that?
Well, just because I think sometimes because ignorance clouds my vision. Obviously, the less ignorance there is.
If meditation be upon the nature of the meditator, how will ignorance survive? The so-called catch is the assumption that there is a duality, that there are two selves, one to be realized and the one who's attempting to realize. Therefore, this was addressed at the very beginning of Satsang.
Yeah, that's great.
Knowledge is liberation. This you know. Knowledge is liberation. Action does not lead to liberation, as Shankara has stated in Atmabodha. The activities are to be understood for body, speech, and mind. That includes thinking. Knowledge is liberation. Inquiry consists of knowledge. That's how the end appears as the means.
So that, I guess, divine thought of Brahman, or inquiry, that drives the mind inward, it really is, I guess it starts, I'm just trying to, kind of go back to my meditation. How do I get confused? Because when you explain it, it's very clear. However, it just seems like if I could be that focused all the time, it'd make, I don't know, just be a lot more ignorance would fall away.
All right. The inner focus, the perseverance, are definitely in order. As for focus, is consciousness itself ever out of focus? Does its knowing ability or light ever diminish?
See, that's just misidentification. When it seems to be out of focus, just misidentification with the mind.
All right, but you clearly know that misidentification. So the consciousness does not change. The existence does not change. For purposes of spiritual instruction, this term, misidentification, has been coined to say you're mixing up the self with the not-self. It does not mean that something concretely of that nature happens. After all explanations of illusion or ignorance are to destroy such, not to establish their existence.
Well, it seems like...
So how do you misidentify? How does it actually happen?
Only through imagination. If I want to imagine something, or I just posit myself as something other than...
But that doesn't actually happen, does it?
Yeah. Because where does it really start? Because if it started, then it'd be continuous in a certain sense, right?
If it started and it ended, it might start again. There would be no real freedom. If it did not start and you realize that it did not start, that is said to be its end.
But it doesn't make sense that a mind is created inside the self. That doesn't make any sense. But that's part of the belief that somehow inside something that doesn't move or change, there's a creation.
Examine your own mind. Where does it start? How do you know it?
Well, I know it by myself. It's the only thing that can know anything.
So you know it in the self and by the self, and never apart from the self. Does something with an utterly dependent existence have any existence at all? From another angle of vision, what is the thing that you call mind?
Seems like it's what I call mind is, I mean, it's hard for me to describe because what I guess when you were just talking to me, I just had a very deep experience. So mind doesn't seem to be, I don't know, it's hard to imagine it, I guess. But it must be. I mean, because if you subtract out what's real from the mind, and there would be nothing. So it must be imagination plus me.
If we take you and we add imagination, has anything actually been added? The rope does not become or grow a snake. Not by any means. There are no snakes living in the rope.
Or temporarily coming to life.
It doesn't temporarily become a snake. The rope doesn't take up its abode in a snake. It is merely imagined. But the imagination does not alter the rope. So it does not even become a snake by imagination. Likewise yourself. What is referred to as the mind is thought, the form of thought, and something that knows it. The conjoining of those two seem to be what we can call a mind, in all its various permutations. Of the form part, the form of the thought, since there's no such thing as a formless thought. The form of thought depends entirely on the knowing part, without which it cannot exist. The knowing part, stripped of the form of thought, is what?
Vast mind. So you're saying all thought, though, when you say that? When you strip it of any objectification.
Was there one that you wanted to retain?
Well, there's always, I don't know, isn't that what keeps the illusion going? Something that it was once to be retained.
Yes, we can describe illusion as a combination of imagination, creating ignorance, and then retaining it or adhering to it.
So it's good being clear, or clarifying that there's nothing else to adhere to. There's no above self reality. Except for where it originates. Because that seems like where the confusion comes, because once it's mixed.
How does the mixture happen? Who does it? When you say confusion arises, for whom does it arise? If confusion rising, you inquire like this, for whom is it? Who am I? There is no confusion. Then there's no start of illusion. Hence, Maya is beginningless.
Is Maya beginningless too, as Brahman is beginningless?
Yes, in the sense that neither one has a start. One is eternal and one never is.
Because maybe that's what we all perceive as ourselves, in like snake in the rope where there is no snake actually, but we think there is snake. Think is not the exact word.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so all there is the self, and even illusion or ignorance is not separate from it. There's no ignorance or illusion in the self, but if we speak of illusion or ignorance, that itself is merely a misperception of the self. Always we deal with only one thing.
If I can question, why is the need of, why is the need of all this? Because I'm so happy, so blissful with myself. Why do I get up to open my eyes to the world? What is compelling me to?
How did you become endowed with eyes? You who are bodiless, how did you get eyes?
Exactly.
Did you get eyes?
Not that I know.
If the I am the body notion is left unquestioned, then you open the eyes, get up, move about, do things, etc. If there's no I am the body notion, you are ever the same, whether the body is sitting or up, active, inactive, eyes open, eyes closed, living, dead, makes no difference. The I am the body notion simply needs to be severed. That is all. How? Inquire and see if there's any connection between the body and yourself.
At some point in time, there is none. But then at some other point in time, it starts existing. It's like dying.
Is it the change of time, like as if we could mark it on a calendar or a clock?
I know.
At some point, it seems as if you have become or are a body. If that's questioned, you find that it never took place. It is not true. The I am the body conception is so much the cornerstone of illusion. Remove that stone, and the entire illusion collapses. I do, I'm here, I'm there, I'm now, I'm then, etc. All these are based on I am the body notion. You're not the body. A changeful, sporadically appearing, sense and mind-dependent, divisible body never became the unchanging, indivisible, stateless, ever the same self. Know it for certain by inquiring within yourself. Do not mistake the object for the self. The object is the body.
Thank you, Master. I wanted to make sure I was clear on what seemed to be a meeting or a comparison of some expedient teachings. There's the advice for self-examination when there seems to be attachment or misidentification. But then when, in your instruction, when you ask the question, are you that which abides or that which rises and sets? And it put me more in mind of the Maharshi's analogy of the no need to examine the trash. If you know completely that it is trash, then it is not relevant anymore, and you don't have to understand it with the same mental mechanism that created it or is part of it. If you feel you're identified or attached to it, then the examination is sort of the right motion within the illusion to get out of it. But if you do recognize that it's irrelevant, you don't have to have an answer to why, how, when.
Yes and no. You're confusing
Okay, yeah.
various instructions given by the Maharshi.
Okay.
The first is he says there's no false I and true I. There's just one self. If we imagine there is a false I, that false I comes and goes, rises and sets. The true I ever abides. Thereby it points out with what you should identify. Since you cannot identify with yourself as if this were some kind of activity to be performed with the mind, in practice, what is involved is a negation of the misidentification. What remains as the residuum knows itself. As for self-examination, if it's possible, do so, because destruction of vasanas, tendencies, is what leads to self-realization. If you do not examine, you will continue to live by such, be it attachment or some other kind of vasana. What he has said in the trash analogy is that a study of the tattvas, enumerating them, when all that is to be tossed out, is like analyzing the rubbish before tossing it out. We should not extend his instruction beyond that context.
It's personal.
So what's necessary is self-examination and self-inquiry to destroy the tendencies, to liberate yourself from them, and to deeply inquire as to who you are, and not treat any of this as if it were an objective study. Self-knowledge, from the most basic to the loftiest, is interior. It all involves making your vision non-objective, an examination of what you regard as yourself, a relinquishment of what is not the self, and thereby abidance as the self. We should not treat this as if it were a study, an objective study. We should not treat the Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, as if it's an objective study, because this would just be so many thoughts. If we are dealing with illusion or ignorance, an objective study, divorced from our own experience, will not be of much avail. It'll be like analyzing the trash. What is required is to get to the very heart of our experience, and not with the intellect concoct images, names, definitions, etc., in description of the activities of that ignorance. But we should cut to the chase, so to speak. Go right to the core of what we regard as ourselves. If examination is possible, examine. If inquiry is possible, inquire. There is no navigation required as to when to look at yourself, when not, when to inquire, when not. Such a doubt can arise only when we relegate such self-examination or self-inquiry to a merely mental plane. If we know that the end itself manifests as the means, this is true of knowledge, this is true of devotion as well. If the end itself manifests as the means, we do not turn on and off the discrimination. We do not turn on and off the inquiry. We pursue it to its end. Then it's like a river which is emptied out into the ocean. We don't have to turn the river back at the end. It loses its form in the ocean. Is this clear?
The Maharshi's reference was misapplied in my question, but that's really good that I hear that. But in discriminating, can you simply ask, as you seem to ask, which one are you? Which one am I? Am I the background consciousness, or am I these?
No need to do so.
Oh, okay.
The choice is known by you. You say, which one? Someone knows the two, lack of better words, whiches.
Which one is saying which one?
The two sides. Who is he?
Right.
Determine his nature. To establish your identity really means to know what in truth you are. It's not a matter of choosing. I think I'll be the higher self, the lower self. Let's see, what day is it? It's not a choice like that.
More of discriminating than choosing. What is real about myself?
Yes, that will work.
And as far as the opportunity that can be used to discriminate and so on, that could be seen as grace to be taken every time and whenever it's available.
And how often is grace available?
Well, it may seem to take different forms, but it's always available.
So then discrimination is always in order.
Right.
The essence of that discrimination is pure knowledge.
श्रीभगवानुवाच अशोच्यानन्यशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासो न गदासोंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पण्डिताः.
The Lord said, "For those who deserve no grief, thou hast grieved, and words of wisdom thou speakest. For the living and for the dead, the wise grieve not."
न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
Never did I not exist, nor thou, nor these rulers of men, and no one of us will ever hereafter cease to exist.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरः प्राप्तिः धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते.
Just as in this body the embodied self passes into childhood and youth and old age, so does he pass into another body. There the wise man is not distressed.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nitya tam titikshasva bharata.
The sense contacts it is, O son of Kunti, which causes heat and cold, pleasure and pain. They come and go, they are impermanent. Them endure bravely, O descendant of Bharata.
Yam hina vyadhayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrtatvaya kalpate.
The wise man whom, verily, these afflict not, O chief of men, to whom pleasure and pain are the same, he for immortality is fit.
Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, upayora vidrishtontaha, tvanayos-tattva-darshibihi.
Of the unreal no being there is no non-being of the real. Of both these is the truth seen by the seers of the essence.
Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinashamavyayasyasya na kaschit kartumarhati.
But know that to be imperishable, by which all this is perceived. None can cause the destruction of that, the inexhaustible.
Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate.
Whoever looks upon him as the slayer, and whoever looks upon him as the slain, both these know not aright. He slays not, nor is he slain.
Na jayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire.
He is not born, nor does he ever die. After having been, he again ceases not to be, nor the reverse. Unborn, eternal, unchangeable, and primeval, he is not slain when the body is slain.
Veda vinashinam nityam yaenam ajamavyayam katham sapurusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam.
Whoso knows him as indestructible, eternal, unborn, and inexhaustible, how, O son of Pritha, and whom does such a man cause to slay, and whom does he slay?
Vasamsi jirnani yadha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tadha sharirani vihaya jirna anyani samyati navani dehi.
Just as a man casts off worn-out clothes and puts on others which are new, So the embodied self casts off worn-out bodies and enters others which are nude.